Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Tanner's Favorite Things. I am Tanner Knight and today we've got a box. Let's go ahead and take a look at what could be inside. So we've got a nice styrofoam packaging here, but this is not the correct styrofoam, obviously. This is just what they sent. All right, so let's go ahead and lift this bad boy out of here. We have a black bag. A black bag that says Revv. Boom. This is the black bag in question. So what could possibly be in here, you might ask. Before we do that, let's take a look what's in this pocket. We have what appears to be, oh nice, some picks. Some Revv branded picks. And a nice little box. And a wiping cloth for presumably the amp. Also, we get some Swedish fish, which means this probably came originally from Sweetwater. I did not order this amp from Sweetwater, I got it used, but you get a nice little sticker. All of this little case candy, another sticker that says Revv. So cool. The last thing in here is a USB cable that appears to be the square kind that you find on printers. Okay, so what else is in this bag? If you guessed it's a purple amplifier, you would be correct. Power cable. It's the purple G20 by Revv. And if you're unfamiliar with Revv, they're a Canadian company. And yep, Canadians like rock music too. And in fact, Revv is responsible for a lot of modern tones on a lot of these djenty style of records that you hear a lot today with this more progressive metal movement. They're most famous for their generator series, I believe, but this G and the D20 are two 20-watt tube-driven amplifiers that are really taking the market by storm. I know this product is not brand new as far as how long it's been around, but I finally got my hands on one, so let's go ahead and take a look. So before we plug this thing in, let's marvel at its glory. Just so we can take it all in. We have a set of dials on the front panel. It's hard to see them, but we have gain as number 1. That tells you the intentions of this amp. And then we have treble, mid, bass. So a 3-band EQ kind of in the reverse order. Canadians, go figure. And a volume dial. We don't have a master or anything like that, but next to that we have a virtual cabinet 1 through 6. In addition to those dials, we have a wide button and a 4-watt/20-watt button, which gives you the option to play with full 20 watts or dial it down to 4 watts for bedroom use. These buttons over here allow you to select the channel or toggle on or off the aggression button, another kind of gain stage that they've packaged into a button format for you. A pre and post button, and a store button. You do get a 1/4 inch output for headphones. That's nice, so you can have nice quality headphones and its own level dial right below that. You can see that we have a clip LED here. I'm not entirely sure what that's going to tell us. We'll have to read more into that. But the virtual cabinet dial does have 6 virtual cabinets that you can pre-program and select on the fly. And then we have a standby on and off switch. Let's go ahead and flip this thing around. One thing that I'd like to note is this handle is about as burly as it gets. Metal on metal, we don't have any kind of leather or cloth to deal with. It's just a metal handle into metal holders and it folds, so that's nice. But on the back we have our standard power input, next to which we have a fuse. So if you do blow a fuse, it's easily accessible there, and hopefully that will... I don't know how you could blow a fuse in this thing. We'll talk about that later, but otherwise we have cabinet lighting. I've seen that on a couple different modern amps, and I'm not terribly certain what that means, but again, we'll do a little research. MIDI in, that's pretty obvious. You can have a MIDI input into this amplifier. We do have a USB port, which is to interface with that square USB cable that we saw earlier, a ground button if you all of a sudden think that you need to add more ground to the electronics of the mix, you can do that. Ground and lift, pretty standard toggle as well. We have a bias test, which is designed to automatically bias the tubes in here. So if you do end up replacing the tubes, you can bias them automatically. I'm not exactly sure how to do that. Seems like weird alchemy to me, but you can do that there. We do have a balanced XLR output and a foot switch, which has a MIDI style of input as well. So the foot switch looks like it's the MIDI 5-pin style. We do have a send and return, which are standard 1/4-inch FX loops, as well as a speaker out. And that's our main cabinet out. You can see it has a little Zap logo up top saying that that's where you need to plug in your speaker. You can select whether you have a 4 or 8 ohm load on those speakers, and then you can select whether it's an internal load versus the speaker. And the internal load means that, let's go ahead and just aim at this right here, this torpedo embedded by 2 notes. This is a load emulation or load producing system here that produces a load on the amplifier even if there's no cabinet or speakers hooked up through the traditional manner. And that's to protect this amp, which is a nice little feature, but it also gives you the option to use the 2 Notes Torpedo software and add some cab emulation or guitar effects, you name it. There's all kinds of things that you can do with that software, and it's embedded right into this amplifier. So you do have a reactive load on the amplifier even if you don't have a speaker or cabinet plugged into this port right here. Otherwise, here is the bottom, nice little branding there, and 4 sturdy feet. And the sides are vented, so if there's any need for heat to escape, theoretically they can escape from those vents on either side. So who is this product for? Well, people without fingerprints for one, because this thing is shiny as hell, and anytime you touch it, you leave evidence of you being there. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. It's just a kind of stylistic choice based on the finish on this material, but it is a nice sturdy metal outer case, and like I said, a metal handle with sturdy rubber feet. So who is this product for? Good question. I think this product is for a lot of people. And again, we haven't even plugged it in to hear it, but I've seen this amp on YouTube in a lot of different people's rigs, and it always astounds me at the sounds that you can get from this tiny little lunchbox style amp. And it is 20 watts. Our tube complement is 12 AX7 preamp tubes and 2 6V6 power tubes for a total of 20 watts. And you may not think that 20 watts is a ton of power, but believe me, it's plenty to power any one of these cabinets behind me. And we're going to plug this in and test it on a few different cabinets just to see what the optimum speaker and cab configuration is for me. But hopefully it will give you a baseline of what this thing is capable of with a lot of kind of common gear. I don't have things that are super boutique behind me. This EVH cab, you can go to Guitar Center right now and buy. This orange cabinet below here, this old PV cabinet, all gear that is really high quality but is not super hard to come by or boutique. And lots of V30s in all of these cabinets. So we'll get a couple different speakers other than the V30. Like this cabinet here, this EVH cab has some EV Electro Voice EVM12 speakers. So that's going to be really cool to hear what 20 watts of aggression sounds like through that speaker complement. So I just wanted to talk about who this amp is for real quick before we do that. And I think that it's basically for anybody who's interested in high quality gear, studio quality gear, that is more than just a one-use type of item. For people who like kind of Swiss Army knife gear like myself, gear that can do more than one thing, then this is certainly going to offer a lot. Because of that torpedo, 2 Notes Torpedo embedded functionality in this amplifier, you have a whole host of digital options on top of your standard tube driven power that is just, you know, classic sounds, with the ability to add IRs into the mix, impulse responses, for those of you not familiar with the digital guitar world, but this is a very modern amplifier, and the sound is modern, apparently. I haven't plugged it in yet, but it's supposed to be a very modern sound. And in fact, they did have a predecessor to this, the D20. The D20 was more of a clean platform, and they kind of say it's the best pedal platform, and this is more of the every type of metal in a box that you could imagine, and that's where this is more geared. So the D20 is more of, I don't want to say a lighter weight product. It has the same exact two notes torpedo functionality, as well as the tube complement. I think it's slightly different, but it's still a 20-watt tube-driven amp by Revv. So the G20 comes out and it's a bit more aggressive, and you can tell by that aggression switch. And our fat wide switch, I believe, was on the D20, but that also is another kind of sound tonal palette that you can play with. That's just a press of the button. So this little switch here is pretty interesting because you can load your virtual cabinets and access them just by twisting your dial. So if you do not have a Fryette cabinet with 4 V30s and you want to see what that would sound like, you can plug it in and find that exact impulse response and program it to this and get that in your digital software. And I think that's pretty cool. You can also toggle the microphones, the amp itself. You can put effects in the two notes torpedo. I'm not going to say that I'm an expert at that particular product because this is really my first two notes product in my hands, but it's a pretty well-known product, and everything that I've read and learned about it so far has been impressive. So we're going to test it and see what we got there. All right, I'm tired of talking about this thing. Let's hear it. All right on top of the Marshall, we have the Revv G20. And luckily, it's pretty easy for me to swap things around nowadays. I was able to just grab the power cable and the cabinet cable right from the Marshall, plug it into the Revv, and now that's plugged into my Delisle cabinet switcher, so I can easily toggle through a few different cabinets. So I have the thing set to 8 ohms, and I have a bunch of 8 ohm cabinets here that we're going to toggle through, and we're going to start with this one, this EVH cabinet, and this is actually, no, this is a 16 ohm cab. Ignore this little moniker here. We have 2 8 ohm speakers in here wired in series so that we have a 16 ohm load in this cabinet. So we have 8 ohms going into 16 ohms. That should be fine. It should not be reversed. If you have a cabinet that is lower than the ohm rating on your amp, that's a no-go. So we have Revv into EVH, and the guitar that I chose today is the G&L Fallout. This is a offset guitar, and it has a humbucker in the bridge and a P90 in the neck. So kind of a versatile guitar in that you get the best of both worlds, humbucker and single coil. And I love the positioning. Usually when I like a single coil, it's in the neck, and usually when I like a humbucker, it's in the bridge where it needs to cut through. So I just went ahead and toggled a few of these dials to where it sounds good in a clean and a not so clean format. So let's go ahead and turn up the volume. We have the gain is not even in the mix right now, by the way, but our gain is set to about 60%, 65%, somewhere in there. And our gain only comes into play when we go to the gain stage channel, which we'll talk about next. But we have treble. I got that wound pretty high. This is not necessarily a muffled sound, but it needs a lot of treble in there, I found. So I got the treble up around, I don't know, 80%, above 75, pretty high. Our mids are kind of in the middle, around 35, 40%, and our bass is around 40, 45%. So that's, I don't know if you can compare it to the rest of the EQs on these amplifiers, but a pretty unique EQ setting, minus the mids, I guess, are pretty normal, and the bass is probably... So having that treble higher, it's, you know, not your standard EQ, but it's not that far from the norm. So right now, blue channel is our clean channel, and it sounds like this. Humbucker in the bridge. We'll go to the neck in a second. Really clean, really nice. Very quiet. It's dead quiet. The volume is up. But the difference between when the volume is up and down is nil. It's very, very minimal. It's quiet as all get out. I love that in an amplifier. So clean's pretty good. Let's go ahead and hear that neck single coil, the P90. Here goes. So very nice single coil sounds and humbucker sounds in the clean. And I don't have anything else to say. It's great. I love the clean sounds. I have no complaints about it. But where this amplifier is supposed to shine is in the dirtier territory, the higher aggression. So let's go ahead and toggle it over to channel 2, which basically engages that gain dial. So let's turn the gain all the way down first, and I'll show you how it works. So here we are. It's the purple channel, I believe is what they call it. The color is purple, and without any gain, right where we are. Pretty nice little rhythm channel, I would say. So if you want to get kind of a tube screamer sound without going for broke, then wind that gain all the way down. But let's go ahead and wind it up and see what she sounds like. Pretty good. With the gain in there, it's a little noisier. Not entirely loud, but you can hear a little bit more hum with that gain up around 65 where I had it before. Let's go all the way with the gain just to get a little crazy, and then to go even further, we have the aggression switch. So let's just punch in the aggression switch first and then go from there. So again, it looks like there's 3 options for the aggression channel. We have nothing, which is unilluminated, and then blue is the first stage, and then purple is the aggressive aggression. So purple, I think, is our most aggressive setting. 20 watts, sounds like this. We're not even dimed on the gain, but here we go. So we've got room to grow. Let's see what happens when we twist this dial all the way. hope you can tell that I'm wearing ear protection because I absolutely need it with this amplifier. 20 watts is certainly capable of blowing your eardrums if you're this close without protection. So I do not advise being this close at all, but if you do, make sure you have ear protection. So let's go ahead and see if I can get a decibel reading now that we have a bass line. So all the way up on this guitar in the aggression channel, here we go. So it looks like I got it up to 107. 107 decibels is pretty freaking loud with just 20 watts. So that's a 20 watt load going into a 2x12 cabinet, an EVH cabinet with two EV Electro Voice EVM speakers. So that's pretty badass, but I want to hear what it sounds like in a 4x12. We have this Marshall MF280 cabinet. This is a great sleeper cabinet from the mid-2000s. 100% birch construction. It's oversized to kind of match widths with the Mesa Boogie cabinets of the day. So this is Marshall's real, just massive, oversized, capable of anything cabinet. So let's go ahead and switch our channel so that our amplifier is plugged into the Marshall. Okay, so here we are in the Marshall cabinet. This has 4 V30s essentially. They're actually Marshall branded 70 watt V30s. So they're kind of a unique speaker, but at the end of the day, they're just a V30 that can take a little more juice. 280 watts, 70 times 4. That's the name of the cabinet, MF280. So there you go, a little tidbit for you. If you see these cabinets, they're usually totally underrated and you can pick them up for much less than you would expect. So here we go. Cleans. We're back at the same exact settings we had before. Nothing has changed except for the cabinet. Here we go. We've got the Sennheiser E906 in the upper corner that's being fed into the Scarlett 18920 interface. So that's what's capturing the sound today. And here we go. So nice cleans out of the 4x12. It's not terribly louder. In fact, it might even be quieter. Not 100% sure, but let's go ahead and hear what it sounds like when we engage the purple channel with aggression and gain. Let's just bump it back. That's pretty fat. I would say that's way more than 20 watts if I had to guess. But again, we do have the thing, well, it's not completely dimed. Let's go ahead and dime that volume too and see what this thing has when everything is as loud as it can get. It's a lot sitting right next to it. It's not the quietest thing, we'll say. It's very loud. It's very clean sounding. It doesn't sound like it's overdriven or overworked. It's just very tight and aggressive sounding, and I really like it. I'm very impressed, Rev. Very impressed. One of the other cool things that I like about this amplifier is it's not only a 20-watt beast capable of those tones, it's actually a 4-watt / 20-watt complement. So we have this button for 4 watts right here, and that essentially cuts the wattage by 80%. So let's go ahead and hear what those cleans are on 4 watts. So the cleans get a little broken up. They're pretty loud still, I would say, but you can get a little breakup on that clean channel if you work it hard enough. Our volume is pegged here. Interesting sound. I think that could be usable for a rhythm track without even just dialing the tone or the volume down. So that's kind of cool. Let's go ahead and hear that channel 2, or the purple channel, in the 4-watt setting and hear what that sounds like. That's pretty greasy still, I'd say. Even with 4 watts, I mean, it's dimed at 4 watts. It's just pegged all the way with gain and volume. But you get a pretty respectable, let's try to see if we can chug on that. I don't want to say chuggy, but let's go ahead and see if we can try that. So I don't know if that would be considered chugging. Ola, if you are watching this and have an opinion, let me know. But otherwise, I think we can consider that semi-chuggy for being 4 watts of badass power. And I'm not exactly sure how they achieve that. Usually when you have an amplifier that has multi-watt sections, it's them just taking a tube out of the mix or just not supplying power to one or more tubes. And I think they probably cut one of the 6V6s out of the mix and maybe one or more of the 12AX7s. So again, I'm not 100% sure how they provide that, but that's usually what's going on there. So 4 watts and very usable tone. Okay, so we know that this amp can be a metal monster with the flip of a few switches and dials. You can get it metal right out of the box. You don't need to have a preamp or a pedal or anything special to get that tone. But I haven't seen too many people talking about what happens if you just plug in your pedal board to the front of this thing and run pedal board through the G20. As I mentioned before, that D20 that they came out with a year before is more of the pedal platform. So they've tried to not go away from the ability to have a pedal board plugged in. There's obviously the effects loop on the back, but this is definitely more geared towards turning dials to get the tone you want instead of adding a tonal palette in the front end. So let's go ahead and do that just to see what happens when you add a metal zone to the clean channel of the Revv G20. We're in the 20 watt version here, no 4 watts. So here's the metal zone into the Revv G20. pretty respectable. I would say that as compared to the aggressive channel, it sounds a little quieter. Let's just do a head-to-head metal zone compared to the aggression channel. Interesting. It's pretty close. It's almost as if you have a metal zone in this amplifier. I'm not going to go as far as saying that. Strike the record, but we will say that the aggressiveness out of this amplifier is on par with the metal zone, which is very difficult to do just stock for an amp. It's something you expect out of a 5150 or a Marshall Super Lead that's been modded, or something with real, or even of the Revv Generator 120. So that's something that Revv is already known for. So I guess it's not too big of a leap to understand how they managed to fit that into this small 20-watt package. So there you go, metal zone with the Revv G20. So I know that we didn't get into any of the virtual cabinet stuff, the 2-notes torpedo that's embedded into this thing with the reactive load. I know, we'll get there, but please understand that that's completely foreign to me. It's going to take a second for me to get acquainted with this amp, number one, and then number two, have the balls to go ahead and dig into that whole can of worms. So if you have any suggestions of where to start, I'm all ears. Otherwise, if used as a traditional amplifier, this thing is rock solid so far. I just plugged it into 2 cabinets and had very desirable results in both of those cabinets, so that's a good thing to me. And then I think if you can add that digital capability into your workflow, then you can probably come up with some pretty creative stuff. So that's all that this is meant to do, is unlock creativity, and it's all subjective. That's kind of the good thing and the bad thing. What I think is awesome, you may think is terrible. What you think is absolutely awesome, I may think is meh at best. So this thing, I can absolutely say that to my ears, it is awesome. And plugged into either of these 2 cabs, we have a winner. I would like to try it in a single 1x12 cabinet, because it is kind of a small guy, and you know, I think it would be really well suited to a small wattage speaker in a single cabinet. So we'll have to come up with a few different ways to utilize this in the future, but for now it's going to sit atop the Marshall, and hopefully that gives you a little taste of what it's capable of as just a standard regular ass old amplifier out of the box plugged into this cabinet. So I had a lot of fun hearing it, and I'm going to have a lot more fun learning a bit more about it as we go. So hopefully you enjoyed this as well. If you do have any questions, comments, or things you'd like to see me do with this amplifier, please feel free to leave it down in the comments. That always helps me determine what kind of content to bring to you. So like and subscribe, and hopefully we will see you on the next one. Thanks a lot.